Today I'm going to talk about how to create a snapshot. Okay, in this video, creating a snapshot is really fairly very simple, but the thing is that you should know what are the basic requirements for creating a snapshot and what it can affect if you are creating a snapshot, and when is a snapshot can be created, it cannot be created, and what will be the effects on the snapshot on the database. But firstly, let me explain to you what is the snapshot. Okay, whenever you must be thinking, most of the people actually who doesn't know what is a snapshot must be thinking, okay, it is a replica of a database, it is a copy of the database. Actually, it isn't. Snapshot isn't actually a copy of the database in the very beginning. Whenever you start to create a snapshot in the beginning, it's a sparse file. What do you mean by the sparse file? A sparse file is an empty file. It doesn't contain any user data. Okay, now the thing is, why do we have an empty file in the very beginning? The basic idea of creating a snapshot is that if it was had a copy of the database, so you would be having all the data exactly as it is, okay, in the snapshot. Now that would create a very big file. That is not the idea of snapshot. So what is the idea of the snapshot? Firstly, remember that snapshot is not an alternative to backup. Backup is needed for every database. Remember that thing. Don't get confused that if you have a snapshot you can skip the backup. Snapshot is not an alternative to backup. Okay, it is actually a way of added what you call protection to your database, but it is not actually a substitute to backup. Backup has to be there. Now let's come back to the main point. Now take for example the snapshot. Okay, when you create a snapshot, actually it creates an empty file. Why does it create an empty file? Because it doesn't have any data. Okay, now let's go and create one snapshot before actually taking it further. Okay, here is the syntax. It says create data. Okay, adventure snapshot. Okay, this is the date. Usually you should always have a date for creating a adventure any snapshots. Okay, otherwise you will forget it. Usually snapshots are taken on a daily basis. It helps you to revert the data actually if by mistake something has gone wrong with your database, if your database is very big, provided that you can lose the data after the snapshot. Whatever the changes had been taken on your database after you have taken the snapshot will be lost. It's a good for reporting tool, but how is it good for reporting the tool? Let me explain it to you later a little bit. Okay, let's go and first create a snapshot. Okay, execute. And there we have actually executing a query, and it will create a snapshot, and I will show it to you with a refresh. Hold on, it should not take that much time because it is an empty file. Here it is. Snapshot has been created. Let's go and check it out. There it is. Now this is basically a complete file, completely empty file. Now if you see at the syntax, it says MDF. MDF is a database file but created as snapshot. Because snapshot is read only, there is no log file created with it. Okay, so there is never going to be a transaction log because there is never going to be write process to it. It is always going to be read only. See, these snapshots are very convenient feature, but they are not a replacement for maintaining the backup and restore plan. Remember that thing. Keep that thing in the mind. Now let me explain to you what happens. Now, because this is an adventure work database, okay, and I have created a snapshot, what exactly it does, what exactly it will do whenever I go and whenever the modification takes place for a table or a whatever field is, okay, it would, the original one from the adventure works database would be get written to the snapshot. Okay, means before writing it to the making the modification to the adventure work database, first the original data from the adventure works would be written to the adventure work snapshot, and later the data would be actually modified actually in the adventure works database. Now this will make it actually a little bit slow down a little bit of your database. Remember that thing. Initially, because the snapshot is free, initially the snapshot is empty, so there is no file size. But slowly as you go on, you keep on modifying your database, the snapshot file keeps on growing. Now suppose if you modify the database up to the 50%, okay, you would be having a snapshot file that would be exactly around 50% of your database size. Now one more thing very important, keep in the mind, is that whenever the changes take place, the snapshot will only have the first change of your records. It won't have the similar changes of your record later on. What does it mean? I mean, suppose if there was a table, I kept on modifying the salaries from 1 to 2nd and 3rd every time, okay, or maybe state or some address or something. The first occurrence of that data, that record, would be actually taken by the snapshot, and after that whatever the modification you do again and again to the same, second time, third time, fourth time on the same thing, that would never be put into the snapshot. So remember that thing, keep that thing in the mind, and you will understand what snapshot is. So slowly it always actually takes the first instance and puts it into the original one since the snapshot was created, and puts it in the snapshot, and the whatever next time you want to modify, you can modify, keep on modifying it again and again, the same data, but the same data would be never be actually put in the snapshot again back. Remember that thing. Only the first time whatever you do the modification, that will be written to the snapshot, otherwise it won't be written. Second time, third time, it won't be written to the same data. Okay, now let me explain to you something else. Now suppose if you query the snapshot, or if you, because its snapshot is a read only file, okay, if you take a report or you query the snapshot, what happens? What will happen is the snapshot will actually try to read firstly from the snapshot itself as much as it could, and then it would read from the adventure. If it cannot find in the snapshot, it will go and read from the adventure database, and if it cannot find if it requires both, it will actually use the both. Now why is that? Because some of the database, if you have originally whatever has been actually the original data is stored in the snapshot, okay, so it will read all that data from the snapshot, and the rest it will read from the adventure database itself. So remember that thing. If you are taking a report, the report would be giving you the first original data, whatever it was, since the snapshot was created. This has an advantage, this has a disadvantage. It's good for the training purpose, it is good for many other databases, but usually it has many of the side effects. I'm going to just show it to you how, what's going to be the side effects. Firstly, you cannot create a snapshot on a database that has a file stream. Okay, second, you cannot create a snapshot on a database that has a, you cannot have a full index one. Okay, remember that when you cannot have a full index database with a snapshot. Now there are many other things that you have to create. Remember that thing. Now once you have created a snapshot, you cannot drop a database. Remember one thing, you cannot drop that database until and unless you have dropped the snapshot. Okay, that's rule number 1. Rule number 2, you cannot detach and you cannot restore that database. I will just show it to you why it works like that. Okay, now here is that very simple thing. Okay, here is the database that on which it was created. I'm going to try to take it offline. Let's see what happens when I take it offline. See, there is success and it has been gone offline. Again I will put it back on online. Okay, no problem with taking it offline or online. Okay, So far so good. Okay, here is our database is back online. Now let's go and actually see what happens if I try to task, and if I say detach what happens is, if I say detach, if I click detach, let's see what happens. I'm going to click OK here. No changes made. Now what it says, cannot detach the database while the database snapshot etc 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 is on. Okay, now you have to first drop the database if you have to attach or detach the database. Same thing with the other thing, restore. Remember the same thing. Okay, so I have to cancel it. Okay, now you cannot take the snapshot, you cannot create a snapshot on the system's database. Remember that thing, the master model tempdb. Okay, the whatever the system database are, you cannot create a snapshot on those things. Okay, remember that thing. Okay, you can create multiple snapshots on the same database. Remember, when you are trying to actually revert from the snapshot, you will have to drop the rest of the snapshots whatever you have created, or else it will actually give you a problem. You won't be able to revert the data from the snapshot. When you are restoring the database from the snapshot, okay, the backup link is broken, so again you will have to take the full backup from the very beginning and start it all over again. Remember that thing again. Database with the file stream cannot be reverted. Again, remember, this is another thing very important. There are many other things you have to follow. You just can go to the online help and just check it out, whatever the snapshots requirement are. Okay, if you are creating a database that has multiple files, so remember that each file has to be specified in a snapshot. Each file has to be specified if your database contains a multiple files. Remember that thing. Again, keep that thing in the mind. Very important. Lastly, remember, you should not create more than the snapshot necessary, because actually it will take the disk space, because it will be writing to all the modifications to all the database, and it will slow down because it's first writing your changes to the snapshot for the first instance, and it will make the database go slow down. So only use the snapshot only when required, and use to the minimum. And remember what are the sides effects on the database. If it is okay with you, then only go ahead and use the snapshot. That's it. I will end it here.